historic peace deal has been reached between Israel and Hamas. It was hailed by US President Donald Trump as the end of the age of terror. Well, central to the agreement is the release of 20 Israeli hostages held for 737 days. Well, to give us a sense of the mood on the ground in Israel today, we're joined by Ilse Strauss, a South African Christian volunteer, and she's the International Director of Education at Bridges for Peace. Hi, Ilse. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hello, Linda. Hello to all the people listening to us. What a day. What an absolute day of elation. You could feel ever since the peace deal was signed. Ever since the ink was on the paper, we were waiting cautiously because everything could fall through at the last moment. I don't think anybody in this nation slept a wink last night. And then this morning, people took off work. They lined the streets with flags so that everywhere that the hostages would drive, they would see lines of their people welcoming them home. It was an ecstatic, elated day.
But also, is there grief for the ones that couldn't come home?
Absolutely. We know that Hamas is holding some bodies, and the latest message that we got was that it doesn't know where all the bodies are. So by this afternoon, they said 4 bodies will be returned. That's part of the deal, but we'll see how that goes. And yes, of course, grief. Survivors who saw their loved ones murdered before them. We had a suicide on October 7th, the second anniversary. We had another suicide. People who can't cope with what they saw. So yes, there's absolutely a sense of grief that this is the time. Now they're home, and now we need to rebuild. Now we need to, after 2 years, there's a sense of restoration. Now the restoration can start.
And how did people watch it? Were they sitting in televisions watching President Trump's speech, or were they out in the streets?
Both. Everyone who could get anywhere. There were a number of facilities where the hostages would be released. They were taken out of Gaza by the Red Cross and handed over to Israel. And then after checkup, they were taken to a number of hospitals. So the people stood in massive guards of honor next to the streets lining Gaza. And then they would stand in these massive crowds where nobody could move, with flags, cheering, waiting. Hostage Square was packed. This was just, if you could get anywhere, you would go there.
And at some stages, there were protesters in Jerusalem, especially in front of Netanyahu's house. So what happened to them?
The protesters, you mean previously? Yes, the protesters were the family members mostly of the hostages, who obviously demanded that their loved ones be returned to them. The protests have been ongoing until now. Israel is an amazing democracy, so protests are part of that. Protest is part of the democratic purpose.
And how do people view President Trump after this?
I believe that Trump is being hailed as a huge hero in Israel. There are people, the Knesset, the government building, is lit up in blue and red for the American flag. Billboards for President Trump. Yes, the people are grateful.
When you talk about it's time to build, what are you referring to? Are you referring specifically to Israel or Israel's relationships with the world?
Both. Israel's relationship obviously has taken a major hit over the past 2 years. And yes, it will take a lot of building and rebuilding to ensure that the relationships are restored. But also the trauma is something significant. We've been through 2 years of war. Every time I hear a police siren, there's something in your body that goes like this. Everyone in this country has some sort of trauma. And to be honest, I don't know how we will live normally again.
So were you living in fear of what?
Missile attacks,
Missile.
but not so much in fear. It's hard to explain. Your body and your psyche you can get used to anything. For instance, the first few nights of the war with Iran, there was fear. But after that, it's basically now, you know what you have to do. You know what you do. You know where you're going. And we do that. Life kind of fell into a normal rhythm again. But that isn't normal. So how do we start living normally again? That's a question that we'll have to figure out as we go along.
When your work focuses on building relationships between Christians and Israelis or the Jewish community, so how can that be translated to start building relations between the Israelis and the Palestinians?
Well, I think that's something that we'll see. If you talk about the relationship between Christians and Jews, that has strengthened tremendously since October 7th. The relationship between the Jewish people and the Palestinians have taken a tremendous hit. And one of the things that I've seen over the past 2 years is the grief within Israelis. They believed truly that peace would be possible in their time. And when October 7th happened, it said to them, no, you were wrong. I have seen grown men weep because they spent their entire lives working for peace, believing that it would be possible in their time. Israel handed over Gaza in 2005. They believed that was the first step towards peace. And October 7th, unfortunately, that shattered that entire illusion. And that will have to rebuild. That is a massive goal that I don't see how it can be rebuilt in our lifetime. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be working on it, but the trust completely eroded.
Well, how do you see the future of Jerusalem in this new Middle East that Mr. Trump is envisaging?
Well, we'll see how the peace plan plays out, because this was phase 1. So basically, we are in the first infant step of this. What it will look like, I have no idea, because the question on everyone's lips is, will Hamas agree to disarm? And if Hamas doesn't disarm, if the people of Gaza, if they don't decide to take a stand and stand for, yes, we will agree to build our people and to build Gaza, rebuild Gaza, instead of trying to tear Israel down, hopefully we can look to a future.
And do you think that the right people are behind this peace initiative? If you look at the Arab leaders and also the Trump administration, that there's more sort of weight behind it to actually make that come true?
I hope so with my entire being. However, this is not a decision that Trump will ultimately make. This is a decision that the people of Gaza will make. This is a decision they made on October 7th. It's a decision they made on October 8th and every day after that. And I really, from the depth of my heart, I pray that they will make the right decision and live in peace.
But are you sort of very, more hopeful now for the future of everybody living in peace in that region?
Well, like I said, the gulf of the erosion of trust is massive. We'll have to rebuild what was broken down in the past 2 years. If you look at the curriculum that Hamas taught their children, it's a curriculum of hate. So how, if you have eaten from a diet of hate your entire life, you can just turn around and now you're gonna love? I think this is a long-term process. Am I hopeful for peace? Absolutely. I am always hopeful for peace, but I don't think it's going to be because of a peace process. That might be the first step. But my goodness, we are looking at a generation that needs to be taught peace, a generation that needs to learn that we will rather live side by side with the Jewish people. We will live side by side with Israel rather than destroy Israel and destroy ourselves in the process.
Well, Ilse Strauss, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Wonderful talking to you.